of my wealth came from not the Wall Street, but when I started investing as an investor who was a woman unmasked.
Today's guest is Natalie Levy, founder of She's Independent Investments, a women-first angel group that's closing the power gap in impact investing, and author of Cash is Queen.
I have a voice because so many others have been silenced. You take on the wrong investor capital, and it's not your business anymore.
When women get on the cap table, in the boardroom, and into positions of real influence, everything shifts. Welcome to the Purpose Profit Shift, where real stories about bold shifts illuminate how we can create a new economy. I'm your host, Rachel Bernier Green, social entrepreneur, activist, and founder of EJ Consortium, a finance consulting firm designed to help purposeful businesses change the world. Today's guest is Natalie Levy, engineer, former Wall Street derivatives trader, angel investor, and founder of She's Independent Investments, a woman-first investment group that's on a mission to close the power gap in investing by getting more women on the cap table, in the boardroom, and into positions of real influence. After years navigating the boys' club of high finance, Natalie made a radical shift, turning personal loss into a movement that's already deployed over $1 million in capital, placed women on startup boards, and just released the book Cash is Queen, A Conscious Journey in Angel Investing. She's here to talk about what happens when you stop asking for a seat at the table and start building one that actually works. Let's get into it. Natalie, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. And I loved that introduction. I can tell there's so much alignment already.
Oh, great. So, Natalie, before She's Independent, before Cash is Queen, before all of this, you were an engineer and a mathematician, and you ended up on Wall Street, um, a derivatives trading floor. So, take us back to that world. What was it like being one of the very few women in those rooms?
Yeah, gosh. It's trauma that we kind of process and stop thinking about, but I still dream about it. Looking different than the others, right? Being the only, or having the eyeballs, you're the young woman, or, you don't look like the management team. It can be a lot. I think it's a mix of, it can be stress, anxiety, it can be lack of sponsorship, lack of, how do you get to what you want and what you deserve and what feels good. I would just say a complete lack of. Like that's the headline. At the same time, the way that I think about, my journey is there's so much growth and there's so much opportunity for evolution in those really tough rooms and those tough life events. So whether you're a Wall Street trader or you're facing the trauma of the household were grew up in or things that happened in school. I mean, we've all been through tough things. And again, some of us, because of how we look, maybe more came to us. And based on our personalities, I know that I chose tough things. I know that I said, hey, Wall Street looks difficult and challenging, and I like money and I want to be financially independent. And I chose tough things, and I had the opportunity to really grow and, build skills and gain, I think, really valuable perspective. And I'd say the biggest thing, which I'm sure we'll circle back to, is listening to that, building this kind of soul fire and listening to this voice in myself, which call it our, inner child or our consciousness, but ultimately saying that wasn't for me and then saying, okay, well, what is? And navigating there.
That is absolutely crucial. And I'm just hearing so much I have that our stories have in common and what you were able to pull from, what was a difficult experience in some ways, but that there was, like you said, there was an opportunity for a lot of growth and for you to take a lot with you that served you really well in what came after. And so
Yeah.
you've talked a lot about, spending years searching for a workplace culture that actually inspired and supported you since that first workplace culture, that was not how you were identifying it. So what were some of the unwritten rules that you had to follow in those male-dominated spaces, and what did it cost you to play by those rules?
Wow. So much, right? I think to show up and to wear the mask, which we could call it clothes, the way our facial expressions happen, not wearing our hair down, choosing not to wear a dress for 2 years, all of that. to not embody who we are. I mean, it takes a real toll. I think it doesn't allow us to be our wild selves. And when operating without authenticity, you're losing power. I think it really impacted health. This is so important. I have so much throat chakra stuff. I know I'm getting all spiritual, but if you're not operating from a grounded place where you feel secure and you feel like you can be your full self, yeah, it's not from a place of power. And in those male environments, like, would I have survived or stayed? Let's use the word stayed. Would I have stayed, been able to stay if I was my full expression? Absolutely not. Right? Like, I would have been managed out much sooner. I would have been, kicked out. I would have been treated even worse. And so I kind of like stayed in this world where it didn't feel great, but I was like, I still wanna be in it because I didn't really know who I was and how, let's say, unnatural and unhealthy or whatever. And maybe that was my story, written in the stars. Again, I'm being probably more spiritual than we were planning for an early Monday, but, like,
Oh, not at all.
basically I keep it going. Basically, like, by withholding and being in that space, 5 years on Wall Street, a year, 2 summers as a summer analyst on Wall Street, including the 5 full-time years through the subprime crisis, which I was trading, and being on the buy side, right? Like, if I hadn't had those experiences and then, time in private equity also on the West Coast, would I have built the skills that I now bring to such soul-driven work in finance and investing on my own terms? So I think it makes sense now, but looking back, like, wow, I was masking, I wasn't myself. I was trying to be what they wanted.
Right. And it's like you give up so much of yourself to fit into those spaces, and it's still not enough. But like you said, the cost of
Oh, yeah.
not masking and not carrying that weight it would have been swift and pretty heavy.
And by the way, like, there is a real cost in masking. It's not just giving up power, but, everything's energy. And so to not be in your expression and to not be able to process things, I mean, there were weekends I would just be like in bed, just laying there, and I'm like, what's wrong with me? And nothing you could identify when you go to a doctor, but it was like my body just revolting, being like, "You are not held. Like, this is not healthy."
Yeah, I have been there. And it wasn't until my early 30s, mid 30s, that I had my first job where I did not have to mask. And just the
Yeah.
weightlessness that I felt in that work blew my
Yeah.
mind. And also, I had these mixed feelings because there was also some grief because it was like, this is
Mm,
what life could be like, what I could have been experiencing. But now that
yeah.
I know, there's power in that too, because I would never trade it and never go back
Yeah.
into an environment
Oh,
where I have to shrink and mask.
and by the way, when you start aligning with and finding and entering these, paths that are more soul aligned and that are more, what you need, the way you can lift, call it fly, call it, excel, because something just works out, right? It's not the fight. It's like, and you're not in fight or flight. You're in this like, oh, that's your magic, right? And I took different roles, being paid less to find myself, which ultimately were so much more rewarding. And I ended up making even more money than the prior roles that I'd left because of the alignment, right? If money is a barometer of success on some level, which I have mixed feelings about these days, probably because I'm in a position where I've made money, but yeah, really, really interesting stuff.
Was there a specific moment, like a meeting, a conversation, or something where you realized that the system wasn't just hard for you, but that it was fundamentally broken?
So many. Like, I'll just popcorn out a few. Realizing HR is protecting the business and they're not actually navigating, like, to help you even
Oh,
know
yeah.
the words they use are about your career. People literally, like, almost dying in the bathroom from stress. Witnessing a pure lack of emotion of self because I was so detached from and unable to process emotion because of these walls I'd put up. I mean, these are just like some examples. And I think one conversation I had with my father on, sometimes you go cry in the bathroom or cry and walk
Yeah.
around the building because that's like you had to have an outlet and it was just so rough the way you could be treated. One of those conversations, and I said, Dad, I'm done. And he said, you're good at this. Just stay there and make some more money. And my response is like, to what end? Like, this is breaking me. And
Yes.
I'm not doing it for him. And I'm not just doing it for money. Like, at the end of the day, like, what is life and how am I living? And I remember that conversation. I just kind of had this awakening of like, no, like I'm done.
Yeah. It Everything you just said was just hitting me with such I had such a visceral response to all of it because
Mm,
it's just bringing back memories. I remember I had a job one time and I was relatively new. We were switching buildings, and the new building, all of the offices were glass paned. And my manager goes, "Well, if everything is glass, where will people go when they cry?" And I hadn't been through a busy season yet. So I laughed because I was like, "Oh, haha, what a funny question to ask." I did not realize how
wow.
real it was that, people have to
Wow.
retreat to the stairways or to the nursing rooms, which were
Mm,
unoccupied because there was no support for working mothers. All of these things that we had to deal with, and
yeah.
it blows my mind now that it was normalized, to the point that and we were conditioned to a certain extent because you're made to think that this is the cream of the crop. This is the best you can do.
Right.
And so you should
Right.
be grateful to be here. You should not be complaining. And that really does a number on your psyche.
Yeah. Gosh, I want to bring something up because of a few things you said. It kind of reminds me. So, one of the conversations when the HR team, sat us down as analysts on Wall Street and are telling us, "Oh, thousands of people vied for each of your seats." They're like, "Just make it work. You're going to be worth $10 million. Like, just make it work." And just as a number, right? Like, I'm not worth $10 million today. And by the way, I think there's so much freedom and so much brilliance in sharing these things. Like, I will speak on stages and be like, I'm worth about, 4.5 million right now. And not like coveting that and being like, it's just money, right? It's just energy. But the fact that, they instilled this thing, right? They're brainwashing us to be like, no, like, why wouldn't you do this? Like, forget your health, forget everything. Like, make it work because this is the epitome of what you need. And by the way,
Yes.
most of my wealth came from not the Wall Street, but when I started investing as an investor who was a woman, unmasked,
Mm,
cared about the energy, I call it quantum alignment, invested not for others and not for about salary, but how I wanted to invest and choosing roles that were really geared towards what did I want. And when I started listening more to myself, that's when, and not to make it like vision boarding, because this is real, like that's when the money started flowing back to me when I stopped grasping for it and grabbing and
yes.
said, "No, like I'm just gonna be myself."
So much power in that I hope our listeners are taking away. Because I think one of the things you said that just made me think of something else is Char sitting you down and trying to reinforce why you should just stay. That in many ways, I felt that the companies were intentionally trying to get you to marry your identity and your personhood with the
Mm.
job. So then you could not imagine yourself doing anything else. And it's very effective,
It's the Kool-Aid.
wildly effective.
It's the Kool-Aid,
Yes.
which let's talk about cults for a second, right? Like, it feels good to be
Yes.
in a cult. I mean, Soul Cycle, like, you have your own
Or else no one would
vernacular.
do it.
No, right, and it's like but when you realize, when you pull back the wool and you're like, "Wait a second. That's not healthy. That's not a leader, that's manipulative." Once you see that, you're not going back. And the amount of people, because I love getting on stages, I love speaking to, groups of women. And I think, saying what are we doing to impact and to open up, for the next generation. The amount of young people that are like, well, something's off. How do I know when it's time to make a change? And you can't tell somebody, "Hey, it's time to grow." But I think
Right.
whenever somebody feels culture's not there, I'm not being supported, you already know. And maybe you stay another 3 months or 6 months or years, but you already know. You have this intuition, you have this knowing. And let me tell you something, if they're not investing in you today, right? Like the culture is not changing unless they have a complete rework, complete shakeup, like which hardly ever happens.
Right. That is so true. You cannot force someone to grow, or as the old saying goes, you can bring a horse to water but can't make it drink.
Yes.
Yes. They were onto something with that one.
Yeah.
So, as we talk about kind of what actually led you to pivot, in January of 2019, you lost your mother. And shortly after that, your cousin Z, who was only 17 at the time. And
Mm.
you said that those losses, that She's Independent was really born from those losses. So, can you walk us through that period and how did grief kind of become
Yeah.
the thing that clarified things for you and gave you momentum to
Yeah.
switch gears?
I think when we go through the toughest things in life, which a lot of times it can be death experiences or maybe a rape, these things that just can be dissociative, like how do you sit with this pain? It's so big. The amount again of kind of that opportunity to learn who we are and to maybe evolve to that next state, gain new perspective. I mean, it's so visceral, it's so real. And so when we lost my mom, it was this, such a jarring to have suicide loss. I mean, just such jarring, unexpected, like you never know. And then you're like, wow, life, there's before and after death, right? And sitting, in grief and, processing loss and finding myself and finding connection with her spirit. It was just this kind of beautiful opening for me. And it was like, okay, I left the private equity firm. I got pushed out because I spoke up about culture, really wanting to honor my mom and myself and women because this was the first loss and knowing how unsupported I and many other women had been and how many women were silenced and knowing my mom never stepped into financial freedom or security, even though she was fine financially. She didn't understand that. I said, okay, I want to do something that celebrates and supports women and I want to really show up. And it's something that I thought about for years. But when you, again, go through something so difficult, you realize a lot of things are full of excuse. It's like, well, I didn't do this because, or I didn't have enough time. But when you get so shaken that you see the world anew, right? And you're like, wait, I'm alive. I wasn't married to a paycheck. I wasn't married, I was, hey, like I just want to honor and I want to show up. And yeah, so I birthed, I guess, created, She's Independent in that moment of change. And then my cousin Z was a huge fan of it actually when I started it. He loved money and just, the idea of success and numbers and financials. And we lost him a year after my mom. And by the way, that loss anniversary was last week. So this stuff is just really, really dear to me. And I've been thinking a lot about it. Um, but the way I've been able to take them and again, honor like these beautiful family members and women and, financial flows in a way that just felt so aligned, not about just accreting more, but saying this money flow matters. And I can lean into things like education and launching others because I care deeply about equity and access. And also as an investor to be able to show up as a woman who doesn't shy away from speaking to the menstrual cycle, which by the way, half the population is probably going to deal with, right? Or postmenopausal things and the fact that we haven't studied women's health, like how beautiful. And by the way, also as somebody who cares about having a big brain and, risk reward on a deal because I'm also a trained financial investor, like I invest in ways that both feel good and feel so value and mission aligned and feel like really great risk reward scenarios with awesome markets and, novel technologies. And I mean, how beautiful to be able to marry this stuff. And so it's not just from a place of giving per se, like I find joy in it myself too, but how beautiful to now be operational as this angel group launching, women and we welcome allies, but it's predominantly women from all different backgrounds and just it's transformational. And I feel my mom like in these rooms, like right here, as we're connecting and she's smiling and like, yeah, it's been a really, really powerful evolution. And the way we operate is so unique because it's so deeply rooted with these values.
I love that, and I hope that the memories of your mom and Z just continue to be a blessing to you and to the work that you are doing. It's really powerful that you were able to, with that grief, and to really face it head on, to unlearn some things. And one of the things that's kind of coming to mind for me is that there is a massive gap between I need to do something different and actually launching a company. So, how did you
Mm.
decide that She's Independent was the thing that you were going to invest your time in? And just kind of tell us how that came about.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the idea, as investors say, the idea is worthless. Like, of course, we want a good idea, but execution is everything at the end of the day.
Yes.
And I'll make it a little ethereal. I'll bring up spirituality a bit, which is we can live in different realms. We can live in our dreams. We can live, in ideas. And then there's the physical world, right? Like we can make things, we can create, we can put paint to canvas, words to paper, whatever goes into building energy into building a business, right? And I think it's a few things at this point. I'm somebody that has always been able to alchemize on some level, like doing, like not just thinking. Being in Boulder, Colorado, which, the amount of spirituality here, like it's everywhere. And I'm spiritual as well. But I don't know if you've heard the term manifesting generator, right? A form of
Oh,
human design. So we all have, let's say we're all born. I know now I'm going to go a little crazy on the astrology, and I'm not crazy deep into astrology, but I think it's fascinating. We were all born, right? And it's like your sign, right? Like I'm a Virgo, but depending on time and birth and all these things, and then also like I don't know, like where the planets were, like the celestial beings, like everything's energy. We are stardust, right? Like just beautiful. Neil deGrasse Tyson, when I heard him say that, I'm just like so beautiful. Um, when you like tap into that, let's call it the station, right? Of like who you are and your soul awakening, there's so much to learn and also unlearn, as you said so well. And I think that for me, recognizing I'm somebody that can also take ideas and like make something from them, whether it's, building the business, which I'll speak a little bit more to, or writing and actually putting words down on paper for, cash is queen. It's been really, really powerful and beautiful. And I feel really, a lot of gratitude. And I think it's that, sitting with the fire and the death and spirit and self, knowing, sitting with self, like how scared are we in the Western world of anything to do with death and also downtime, right? Like we have a badge of honor of how busy we are, right? Women are like, I'm gonna fix everything. And it's like, hold on a second. Like, what are you running from? I used to be an athlete.
right.
And I still think, our bodies are a temple and this amazing vessel. And oh my God, I'm late luteal, right? Like, I know I'm getting all nerdy here. Like, I'm not touching that cold plunge. Like, I'm not working out. Like, my body needs to just
Yeah.
rest and
Yeah.
to take this space and time and go inward and rest and reflect. Like, that allows you to be that much more powerful and magical and like aligned and intentional so that when you are ready to birth that thing, whether it's a human or a book or a business, right? Like you have that infinite creative, power and energy. I'm going to use a phrase and it might scare some of your listeners. It's amazing. Pussy power. We're scared. Like society has been scared of women because we have infinite energy. Like it's this amazing thing that you can tap and unlock. I'll quickly say, sorry, this is so much fun. So I just have to say it. I
Oh,
recently read
need to apologize.
I recently read, so Kundalini yoga is this like form of awakening, right? That people talk about. It's like moving this energy and you want to make sure that you have enough. I won't go into it, but you want to make sure that you have enough practice before you do it. But the term Kundalini, same root as kunt, which literally means like enlightenment. Just saying. We we have been taught that our body parts as women are bad and not to be loved. I mean,
Scary,
yeah.
not to be
So
talked about.
anyway, exactly. Now let's talk about birthing. She's independent. So in this place of grief and loss and just honoring energies and, having got inward and finding enough footing and grounding, I ended up, on this path of saying, great, like I'm going to start having community events and hear what these women want. And first it was a little bit more on kind of the women's health side and thinking even, women's sexual health, recognizing so often women were repressed because they didn't want us to be liberated and be able to be full humans. And then navigated more into the professional realm because of my voice and advocacy around things like negotiations. And I'm so good with money. And then naturally, these women are like, wait a second, your portfolio is what? They were so impressed hearing about some of my private angel returns. It very naturally gravitated and evolved into now she's independent investments. So it's this angel investment group that it wasn't me saying, I need to make this happen. It was following this path and showing up as I was and just meeting people and speaking on stages and just, it's been a really beautiful journey. Where now I'm so proud of our portfolio, what we're doing in the world, every time one of our members like they go through a transformation and they're like, oh my God, I wrote my first check. Wow, I just screened a company. I ran diligence. It's amazing. It's the launch, right? Like it's these
Yeah.
again, it's almost like each time it's a birth, right? I keep using the word birth, right? But what we can bring into the world if we're listening and on some level focusing, right, our energy on what we want, not just one thing, right? I'm not just building,
Yeah.
but focusing enough to build when the time is right.
Yeah. And part of the reason I love that you focused on the power and wisdom that women contain that we have
Yeah.
just societally ignored, even when we have data that tells us, that women-run startups, tend to perform better. And then we look at other data that tells us that less than 2% of venture capital goes to women-founded businesses. And I always have such a hard time reconciling that because it's like, are we not looking at the numbers at all? And so you didn't just start a fund, you built a woman first investment community in part to, challenge this idea that it makes sense for only 2% of venture capital to go to woman founded businesses. So, what was it like when you launched? Because you have a heart forward, woman first investment group. What did people say? How did you feel as the idea kind of came together and you started to see the first woman joining the group and seeing results?
Yeah. I will say it's been beautiful and like it's not easy, right? I think
Yeah.
things that are worthwhile are generally not easy. I would not invest in a heart forward business as an investor. There's a time and a place to give money, and there's a time and a place to invest and write a check. I have, as an individual and as a human and as a woman, decided every year to invest and bootstrap and self fund our operations because I care so deeply about what we're doing in the world. And so today, we're not a like sustainable enterprise that's like cash flowing or paying me any salary. I do pay our fractional team. And again, I'm also taking money from my bank account every year. If and when we have exits, which I believe we will, it'll be more sustainable. But this labor of love and this thing that we are, this beautiful community and investment entity that we have created and that we operate, I mean, I believe that it is transformational for a number of individuals from seeing things directly and then also just like putting that out in the world so that as a part of investor conversations, and I'm, sitting on a panel and it's likely three dudes, and I'm sorry to use that vernacular, but I'll just say three men to have the lived experience and to say, oh, I invest a little bit differently and I choose not to invest in
Yeah.
assholes. And calling out the gaps and speaking to the resilience of underrepresented founders and what that looks like in the numbers and how I'll make that bet every time, right? And
Yeah.
it's not from a place of being combative, like a Karen, if we're going to use that phrase. It's from a place of I have a voice because so many others have been silenced. And I use it intentionally and I care and I have a big brain and the returns show that this works.
Yes. So walk us through it a little bit. How the Well, before I ask that question, I want to thank you for your transparency and just saying how the business model itself right now isn't sustainable. I think it's really important when we are telling people about things like this, when we are subsidizing the cost by either contributing our free labor or not paying ourselves a market rate, that we are upfront and transparent about that so that as other people are
Yeah.
seeing from the outside looking in, that they can get a realistic view of if you're trying to do something similar, this is what it may take, or you may have to adjust the business model if you need it to be, you know, actually cash flowing in a positive manner before there are exits. And I think that that's just like a really important call out. But I would love to talk a little bit more about what actually goes on in the membership. So I know that the members, they pay a certain amount per year. And then they're not required to invest at all, but they can invest as little as $2,500. And then you screen hundreds of startup calls a quarter. So, what does it actually look like? The women that get involved, kind of what's their mindset and what do they find after they join the program?
Yeah, absolutely. So quickly, I want to say because I love this idea, and I do share a lot of this in Cash is Queen. Like I want to share a playbook. I want others to have investment groups and I want others to step in and transparently to know also lift operations, cost, like that kind of thing.
Yes.
But I just want to bring up this example because we did speak briefly, to like sexual liberation. And the first women friendly, women owned sex store was in San Francisco. And they basically said, we want more stores like this. And they literally like shared their business plan because it's not about just the one store. Like, you don't need all the business. Like, we want to change the world. Like, we want others to be showing up like this. So I am very transparent. And then I just want to also, I think, speak to this because it's a big one too. I think there's a lot of women who give money, but they aren't investing.
Right.
And the delineation for me is big because a giving circle, if you know what it is, great. But to step in as investor, what that does in terms of somebody saying, oh, wait, now I identify I'm an investor. I made the decision. I didn't give it to somebody else. I didn't just gift it. And I'm not, there's a time and a place for giving, but,
Yes.
and I've seen a lot of those, but the amount of work I'll say that goes into, allocated as investors, like there's a real lift and it's so beautiful. And the transformation of our members, whether or not they have money, because we said, you know what? There's young women. I had one young woman said, "Oh, I really want to be involved, but I don't yet have capital. I'm studying to be a doctor and I worked at a startup." And then another young woman, a Black woman, she was a WMBA, and she's like, "Oh, I don't have capital, but I want to be, in finance at some point." I mean, we literally rolled out what we call the investment observer membership. And it was, you don't need capital. Like, you want to be a part of this, you want to be learning, you want to be a deal leader. And now half of our members are what we call investment observers. And so whether you're an investing member or an investment observer, everyone has the ability to learn, engage, be a deal leader, be in these rooms that often are so coveted and so just like off limits, because it's not about just my portfolio and me saying I'm going to make a bunch of money. I'm like, hey, how do y'all get involved? How do we truly democratize access, make an accessible launch pad for anybody who wants to step into this arena? Like, it's truly accessible. And if you want to invest, great. And if you want to be here for learning, awesome. Right. And so we're not technically even a fund. It's, this member led, driven angel investment group where, again, yes, there's this community element and there's membership dues, but I mean, there's so much we do. Weekly deal calls, let me say live weekly deal calls. We're talking about sourcing and screening and what's happening in the deals. We do regular workshopping beyond that. Just recently, we did some investor accounting discussions where we went into advanced and also foundational concepts, because when you have a portfolio or you're planning, like, you need to know this stuff, right? We want to make sure you have the toolkit and that you're resourced. And then the quarterly pitch days where we take these companies that we've screened and we've sourced as a group and we say, okay, Natalie is not the one that's choosing all the ones coming. You all have a vote, right? So together, again, democratizing and really creating this space where, okay, Rachel likes that, Jenny likes that, like Dr. Edong loves this one. And then together with these votes, we're coming together and saying, okay, these five are going to pitch us. And then again, we saw the pitch and we digested it and we reflect and we discuss. Okay, which ones are we thinking we want to run diligence or deeper, research on?
Yeah.
So that's a little bit of how it works. But again, there's a big operational lift, I think. And it's work, but it's like, it's working. So I guess like
Yeah.
it's a mix and it's really rewarding.
And as you're saying this, I'm just coming up with a list of women in my head that I am going to share the
Love it.
opportunity with because I was just,
Yeah.
yeah, it's absolutely phenomenal. And I'm so glad you talked about the investment observer portion as well.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, and
oh, go
I
ahead.
want to say one other thing because I think this is really big. So, like, I'm a white woman, right? I'm Jewish. So, like, there's definitely stuff in my ancestry and lineage that I feel around, just all the hate for, Jews and just, and also being a woman, right? Like, we're treated a certain way. But the thing I want to speak to is we have members from like all these different backgrounds. And the thing that I feel really proud of is all these unique backgrounds, right? We have women with all different immigrant backgrounds and like all different industry backgrounds and all different levels or lack of understanding of financials. They've all felt welcome. And belonging was never a or inclusion was never a checkbox because I think there's so much garbage out there, right?
Yeah.
And the fact that like it's this space where we're celebrating this diverse breadth of, these backgrounds, and actually in Catch is Queen, the book I wrote, it introduces a dozen stories of different women from all over the world, who stepped into investing, and them sharing Dr. Idong Essie Gibson when she said, you know what, in my community, right, like in the Nigerian community, for a woman to be an investor and for what that's, you know, even honored within how she shows up and how her husband looks at her and, has just appreciated her skill, how it's influenced others, Edwene Alphonse, like her kids and like now their investment acumen as she's navigated as investor. It's not like my story, it's our stories. And I think that's a really big part of this because again, it's not just my portfolio.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and your book was already on my, TBR list, but it is just itching its way, higher. I need to slow down my roll on the books,
Oh,
but I cannot.
there's
I
an
never have been able to.
there's also an audiobook and it's my voice.
Oh,
So just saying, you have a few ways that you can check it out, but no pressure.
I'm yes, because I just think the next time I have to move my book collection, it
I see a
is
lot of
yeah,
books.
yes, a lot, and this is not all of them. They're piled around my house as well, but one way or the other, I will be listening to it. So I would love to hear more about the board placement program too, because you are helping women not just within investing, but getting them into actual seats of governance. And so, what made you think that that was something that was necessary? And what changes inside a company when that happens, when we start to see more women in the boardroom?
Yeah, gosh. When we're younger in our career, we only have purview, or let's say we only see the inner workings of who works at the company and who owns the company maybe that's like in the room. When you start to expand your knowledge base or your understanding of how business works, you realize there's the boardroom, right? There's the investors and the power dynamics and the decision making and influence of those rooms is real. And so realizing that, you know, the CEO, right, the company like is overseen by the board on some level, right? And that investors have real say in terms of, well, what's going to happen, how is the company operating? Literally, the board decided to, remove the CEO. Obviously, it depends. Like, there's a bunch of things here, but to recognize, yeah, governance and direction, influence, like the boardroom really matters, and the cap table, the ownership structure really matter. I would say it hasn't been like a focus for us, given I'd say the focus has been investing, but we've absolutely been influential. And we're very open and transparent and real to have conversations to say, well, what's going on? What is the culture and who is on the board? And oh, your second in command, a woman, she has a really small equity position. What's happening there? Right? We are engaging in these really brilliant conversations and sometimes having hard dialogue. Is
Yeah.
this, appropriate? Like, is this something you're aware of? And I'll tell you something, the companies that we invest in, which by the way, we love women owned and we lean into women owned, but we also invest in men, assuming, right, that we're finding enough alignment in these categories like culture and representation. The feedback we receive from the companies that we invest in, even when there's not, a woman leading the charge, they're like thankful that we engage and we show them another perspective and that we're like, hey, like you can do better or we can do better here. So it feels really, really substantial. And when we're treated unfairly or, somebody shows their cards and you can tell they're not, they're saying one thing and they mean another, right? They're not really
Yeah.
supportive or they're not really aligned, we see flags and we pass on deals and we say no. And sometimes we stand up for ourselves. Well, always, but we don't always have to, meaning we're not usually put in those positions. But there was a recent diligence where it was actually interesting. It was a woman in charge, but she wasn't like the original founder CEO, but she was the CEO. And she tried to push back on us and say some kind of not nice language around our request to see the ownership structure of the business, which is very standard.
Hmm.
And she basically challenged our knowledge and the way that we operated as investors. to dare ask because our check wasn't large enough. And it was really interesting. If I was a newer investor, I might have said, "Oh, you know, this doesn't feel good and she's calling us out for not knowing." But here we are, experienced investors. And it was a learning moment, right? Like we didn't have to address it and
Yeah.
we did. We said, "Hey everyone who got the email, like first, like she doesn't know what she's doing and that's okay. But her language is not okay, and the way that she's acting is not okay," which we didn't use that language of her, but we went back to her and said,
Right.
"Sorry you feel that way. We've invested in many deals and we've seen many deals and we have lawyers, securities lawyers we work with who've, guided on thousands of deals. And we used a language to basically say this was inappropriate without saying that. And we come from a place of grounding and knowledge. And so if somebody else, if we're triggering them or if they're not able to meet us, we're not behaving with that mask. We're saying, hey, we're investors, we're real investors. And like, sorry you feel that way. And by the way, we don't want to invest in your business. And again, we didn't marry that line together. Like we're not going to shit on somebody, but
Right.
I'll tell you something. When somebody interacts with us, and if they are inappropriate or if they cross, some kind of boundary and we assert ourselves kindly, that
Mhm.
and sometimes it's not so kindly, like, sometimes people really need more of a frank discussion.
Yeah.
But hopefully that will change something in them so that the next time they show up in the world, it's from a more grounded place. And it's okay if it's not, but we're not going to stay in that realm. We're not going to invest in them.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I love that. And, speaking of your experience, because as you said, you're not new to this. Your personal portfolio has returned over 20 times on your early growth tech investments. So
Yeah.
when someone says that, investing through this lens or values aligned investing is a nice idea, but underperforms, and that having conversations like that are unnecessary. It doesn't matter if somebody has a terrible attitude. How do you respond when you show them that, this values aligned investing actually can outperform?
Yeah. So first I'll make the distinction. My early checks, the ones that have really outperformed, I wasn't who I am today, right? Like we're always evolving, hopefully.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure I still seek some level of, I don't want to invest in assholes and I care about, these things within a business, but I'm much more values aligned today, like much more. And what that means is my portfolio has evolved. Like the way that I allocate today is materially different than when I used to. I would say the thread, and one of the things that, is exciting is that I've always been like good with money. I've been good with data. And so I'm able to look at numbers and look at forecasts and, look at story and qualitatively and quantitatively, like feel into like, is this something I want to allocate to? Now also that alignment of culture, people, resiliency, all of that. But I've always known like how important people are, right? Like we can say it's a business, but it's people at the end of the day. It's all energy at the end of the day. And I don't care if like even if I really like the people, if I think the widget that they're building doesn't need to be in the world, like great, I don't like it. So it's like it's an equation, right? It's a lot of things that I look for. And I'd say to the point of when I say the returns matter, like they tell a story, the resiliency of women and underrepresented founders and what they do with less capital and talk about building a business, especially early stages when it's so hard. I'm going to invest in the resilient individual every time. Like people, 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 people. When people ask me, what do you care about? Like, what do you look for? There's a million things I look for, but people, when you're talking early stage, like that is emphatically the most important thing. I had a woman of color who was a new mom, just gave birth, and she was pitching me on something. And she said, yeah, these guys, like, they tell me that, I'm not in a position to be running a company. And I'm like, my God, this woman, woman of color, just gave childbirth. And she is showing up so strong and so brilliant. Talk about resiliency and talk about like somebody who puts in the work. Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And, at the end of the day, like we all live in our own world, right? And what does that mean? Like, are we open to the brilliance? And maybe some people are scared of women. Maybe they're scared of our infinite power. But, to recognize there are real returns when you look at like the hit rate on, unicorns, and you look at, how many women, and, it's unbelievable. It's incredible because so many women and so many diverse founders are not funded, right? It's just something you need to be aware of in terms of the numbers. And by the way, women actually account for a huge portion of startups, not all venture startups. Like, talk about small businesses. And I think understanding the nuance and the difference and educating yourself. If you're a founder, is it venture trajectory? Is this a venture business? And if it's not, what are other routes? And I'm not saying traditional lenders will treat you the same as a white man, okay? Like, we know that too. But what are you doing? And are you speaking to community banks? Are you speaking to, folks that want to give you capital? Are you looking at the small business loans? Like, because not everything's venture fundable.
Yes. Yeah, I have that conversation with clients all the time that you need
Yeah.
to match the right type of capital to the right need. That not everyone needs,
Yes.
not everyone needs an investor, because I think that there is a common misconception between entrepreneurs that don't have a financial background where they think that getting an investment is just free money, and they, in the sense that
Oh
they don't
no.
want to return it because it's not a loan. And so I have to disabuse people of that notion all the time.
And we're doing God's work, because you take on the wrong investor capital in your business. Like, it's
Mhm.
not your business anymore.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I just need that to sink in. If I could scream something from the rooftops, it would be that.
Yeah.
I recently had a conversation where I talked someone out of bringing on equity investors because they had not, when they talked about the vision they had for their company long term, it was just fundamentally misaligned with the type of capital that they
Mm,
were planning to raise. And so walking them through,
yeah.
like, these are the decisions that change. This is how your business looks differently, how it operates differently, how you are restricted in different ways, because of the choice that you're planning to make. I think it means that you need to make a different choice that's better aligned with where you actually want it to go.
Yeah. In every realm, find the alignment. Every realm. And
Yes.
if something's coming to your door and knocking and saying, "Take me," that's not what you want. Let me tell you. Just like a deal. Like, if deals are coming inbound and they're like, "Hey," like, sure, like, we're gonna look at these deals. But often, like, on average, they're not nearly as interesting as the ones that were through an intentional introduction, or we found them because of some story, right? And so just buyer beware, founder beware, capital beware, all of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, as we're kind of wrapping up today, I wanted to just touch on when you wrote Cash is Queen, and you described it as Chicklet meets a deep dive into angel investing. So, why was it important to you that the book be personal and accessible rather than another technical finance manual?
Yeah. I mean, I'm me, right? Like, I'm a nerd who likes to invest, and I'm engaging, and I'm alive, and I like to bring
Hmm.
up a dating story or mishap that may allow somebody to navigate through laughter into an investing concept, like, that's me, like, that's storytelling. And I think that the more we can meet ourselves and be who we are, and as somebody who loves to read, how cool if you can, have a version of Chicklet where people are learning as they read it,
Yes.
you know?
I
Because
absolutely love that.
reading, it's beautiful, and, like, what an amazing place to find nuggets of wisdom and, seeds of, maybe it's spirituality, or realizing you could live, a little bit differently, or honor yourself a little bit more deeply. And I've been through a lot, I've been through the tough things and the death and the loss and the rebirth, and, like,
Yeah.
I live in a way where I have a lot of gratitude and I found a lot of grace, and to wanna honor and share that, because we're all connected, and the thing that would always inspire me when I was younger was hearing from women who were a bit older and, who shared wisdom freely and shared authentic stories. And so for me, it felt really powerful to be into that and say, "Great, here's some of my story, and, hopefully some of these lessons can be ones that allow others to, open up and maybe look at and process grief a little bit differently, or level up their, investor capital flows, etc."
Absolutely. And so, if anyone is listening right now and they have never thought of themselves as an investor, but something in this conversation just kind of woke them up, what would you say is the first real step, like an actual thing they could do this week?
Well, obviously, cash is queen. I think the
Yes.
book is great, just introducing a lot of concepts, and it's fun. Cash is queen of conscious journal and angel investing. There are so many ways, though, you can participate. First of all, you listen to this conversation and you didn't tune out if you're still listening. So you've already begun, right? So congratulations. You can, seek what speaks to you, whether it's other podcasts or conversations, more, dialogue in community in places like She's Independent, or maybe it's an alumni group, or, with some of your friends, you're like, hey, let's talk about this thing that I heard about. Do you do it? Like, let's talk about it. And there are more, dense kind of techs, things like venture deals, Brad Feld and Jason Mendelsohn, things that have been around for years, but they're not going to be as fun. I'll just tell you that right now. But sign up for newsletters of VCs. I mean, there's so much. We're in an information content age, which can be garbagey, but there's also really great content out there if you're looking, if you're seeking. And don't just take the first thing that comes to you, like, oh, what feels good, like in your being and in your mind. And when you have that curiosity, be proactive to evolve and grow and learn more.
Absolutely. And we will have the book and She's Independent linked in the show notes for easy access for everyone. And just my closing question for you, Natalie. If She's Independent achieves everything you're dreaming of, 10 years from now, what does the investing landscape look like? What's actually different?
Gosh, it's a really good question. For me, like, it's kind of two different questions. I think it's like, if She's Independent achieves everything that I want, like, I feel like we've already achieved, like, we've already found success because of what we've put into the world. I think I'm thinking of like fractals and waves and like, that butterfly effect of, okay, She's Independent was here and now there's more angel investment groups there and more women waking up saying, whether I'm angel investing or just my consumer spend is more intentional, funding flows change so that the assholes running businesses that are doing things that you don't appreciate, you stop putting money into them. Right now, we live in a world of like, at least in the Western world, it's like, a handful of men run these tech companies and they have way too much influence and power. And, like, do we have to be beholden to that? Like, there's a better form of capitalism and money just way to show up where I'm not impressed because that person happens to be a billionaire because I don't like their energy. Literally, I had this conversation with somebody and I said no to going to his event today. And
I
it's
love
like,
that.
wow, like what power? Because yeah, it's like to recognize and see these things for what they are. I think it changes so much. And so yeah, I think way more funding flows to women and diverse owned. I think there's way more women and diverse owned folks in capital allocation roles, like in the industry. And we're funding women's bodies and women's healthcare. I mean, like, we're already
Yes.
starting to do it, but it's like almost like earlier stage a lot of times, Series A or before. And it's these companies are getting like Series C, Series D, like they're getting acquired, they're going public. Like, I want more of that. That's the world that I choose to live in. And that's what I want to influence.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I have one other question, and this is completely unrelated. But what's the story with the pink rotary phone behind you? Because it's just been
Oh my
catching my eye
gosh.
all the time.
Yeah, I know. Okay. So my cousin Z, who I love so much, he loved pink. And so there's something really that feels beautiful and like feminine, but also it's like honoring and I don't know. So, here I am in my office space area and like here's a little pink globe. It's like there's a pink octopus right there and this gorgeous picture from a woman in the French Riviera that I picked up. And like just, do you and what feels good. And to me, like
Yeah,
pink feels good. And so is it connected? No. But is it fun? Yes.
absolutely. I knew there had to be a fun story. I knew there had to be a fun story behind it.
It's like, and these things found me. Like I wasn't looking for that. It found me and I said, "Oh yeah, I need that." Like,
Yeah.
and do I need it? No. But again, what is around us? What's our surrounding environment? Yeah, like, how does it make you feel? And I'm like, cool. Like, I am I used to probably not wear pink as a woman because I was hiding the fact that I was a woman, and now I'm like, "Ooh, bring on the pink."
Same, same.
Yeah.
So, on that note, everyone listening, that was Natalie Levy, engineer, Wall Street trader turned angel investor, author of Cash is Queen, and founder of She's Independent Investments. If this conversation moved you the way that it moved me, I want you to go to shesindependent.com, grab Natalie's book, and we will have both linked in the show notes, and ask yourself, where is your money going and does it reflect who you actually are? Because Natalie just showed us that when women get on the cap table, in the boardroom, and into positions of real influence, everything shifts. So share this episode with the woman who needs to hear it. We're not waiting for a seat at the table anymore. We're building our own. And as always, if this conversation resonated with you, we'd love for you to subscribe to the Purpose Profit Shift wherever you listen to podcasts. We've got episodes dropping regularly with more visionary founders and change makers who are truly reshaping how business gets done. And if you found value in today's episode, leave us a rating and review. It helps other values driven leaders find us. Until next time, keep leading with intention, scaling responsibly, and building businesses that matter. I'm Rachel Bernier Green, and this is the Purpose Profit Shift.